Turn up the lights. Oh, is it so dark?
Huh? Not sure.
Uh-oh. Huh.
Not sure it's dark here.
New issue.
What?
Those lights aren't coming on.
None of them?
None of them.
Well, they do turn.
Ah! You got one out. That's it. Is there one? Hello, everybody.
Hi.
You gotta give them a chance to jump on before you start up too quickly.
Okay.
It's Saturday night. Hi, Clarence. What have you guys been doing today? Hello, Griffin. And Mix. Alan is going to do
I'm going to play with the graphite wash at ampersand thing. People were asking about how to apply it and all that stuff. I'm just going to show them what I do.
Okay. Thank you. It is my birthday today. Hildy.
That's why I'm dressed.
That's why you're dressed?
I wore pants for your birthday.
Oh.
What?
Stop. You always wear pants to
Well,
these.
I wear sweatpants. These are actual real pants.
Oh, those are our real pants. Look. Oh, there's room on the floor. Not really. It's just shoved over to
I
the
just
side.
made it after like 10 minutes ago, so you can walk.
It's true. Thank you for the birthday wishes. I know. Don't you love his hair on him? It keeps out of his face, and it's while it's growing long. So I'm going to turn on the fan because I'm cold. I should have changed my shirt.
Maeve likes it.
I know.
My daughter likes it.
Your hair?
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So we're over here on this specific table used for
Sculpting stuff. And
sculpting and everything. And you're going to play with some...
I'm going to add some water to graphite and show people how I make the texture background.
Okay. Do you have the graphite with you, or is it,
Well,
it's just in the box,
it's in
right?
this box, but,
But that's
I'll grab
generals and...
It's generals and Cretacolor kind of mixed together because I don't
Right.
really differentiate that much between the two,
Mm-hmm.
and so I end up using both.
Oh my God, I'm wearing white pants. You're going to do the graphite thing, and I'm wearing white pants.
So
I never
it's
wear
like
white pants.
Cretacolor graphite powder, and then there's the generals too. And
Right.
And I basically mix them both in there, so it doesn't really. It's not
Yes.
like I favor one over the other. It's just that these are what I happen to have, and maybe a combination
Of both of them.
So, and that's what's in this box.
So
So
your
it's
tools.
just a box full of graphite powder.
Gotcha.
See,
And brushes.
yeah, and I actually have gloves, but I don't really wear these for graphite because graphite doesn't really hurt you so much.
No.
So I can tell because my daughter ate some of it when she was young, and I called the poison control center.
Poison control.
And they said as long as she's not inhaling it, that it's not going to hurt
She's
her.
okay.
So,
Yes. So you have clayboard.
yeah, this is just
Ampersand
a normal
clayboard.
piece of ampersand clayboard, 9x12. It's very smooth on one side. Obviously, it's smooth where the clay is, but
Now, someone asked earlier, not on this feed, but people have asked if you gesso over it, then you don't have clayboard anymore.
if you gesso over clayboard, then you get gesso board.
Then you have gesso board.
Yeah.
Yes.
So and it works, but it's different. It's not the same feeling. It seems to adhere more to gesso sometimes than to clay, in a way that
So you don't get that
it's a little harder to subtract from
Right.
on the gesso board than it is on the clay board. This is so smooth, and I mean it's still porous, but it erases when I do the eraser thing with the electric erasers and the abrasive erasers. It's much easier to take it out of this than it is out of the
Right,
gesso
than
board.
the gesso
The
board.
gesso board still looks good. I did a.
But usually if you're doing gesso board, that also you end up using
I
like
usually end
some
up
oil
painting on
paint
top
off
of it, too.
of
Yeah,
it.
if I'm using gesso. Usually I don't do gesso board unless I'm working on something bigger
Right.
or something oddly shaped or whatever. I have some odd shaped pieces coming up that are going to be fun for the cockroach.
What's with the meat grinder attached to the table? That's for sculpting.
Yeah,
it's
this
for
is
Sculpey.
Just, when I use Sculpey, you can run the Sculpey through it and it grinds it up instead of having to knead it by hand. And so it just grinds it up so that it's easier to manipulate.
A little bit to
and
soften.
Then you can knead it by hand and it's smaller, thinner. It's like the consistency. It just helps.
I know. Yeah. See, these are all these interesting things here. The meat grinder. Let's see. What else do we have?
A blowtorch.
Oh, the tiny little blowtorch.
That's for resin.
Right.
And also, like, it'll take bubbles out of paint. I wouldn't do it over oil paint, but on acrylic paint, it'll take bubbles out of it. But over oil, it'll just set it on fire.
Well, yeah. What advice do you give someone to start using charcoal and graphite powder? It depends on what you're going to do with it.
Yeah, well, I don't use charcoal. I have some charcoal powder. I haven't really gotten into it yet. But the graphite powder is pretty easy. I don't know that it would be that much different on this kind of surface. I think maybe the charcoal might even be a little easier to lift off from what I've heard. But I'd have to test it and see.
Yes.
So, what else? I got a bunch of sponges. So I grabbed different kinds of sponges.
So we have water.
Yeah,
there's your water in your bowl.
Different kinds of brushes. These are all basically toast because I've scrubbed them into this thing so much.
And there's this is the Chinese takeout full of sponges.
Oh, this? Yeah.
Sponges. All different kinds of sponges. These are little like craft sponges and things.
Mm-hmm.
And another one.
That's a skull somebody gave me, I think. I don't know what it is, but and then
Steven says he loves the mad artist look.
Oh.
You're his hero.
Thanks. I did.
The skull. The skull that someone's dog was chewing on.
Yeah,
what
somebody
is the
gave
skull?
me this. I don't know. It looks kind of like it might be a bird.
It's
I
not,
think
well, it could be.
It could be a
one of
bird.
those
It's
big,
got a really big.
old
It's got a
pelicans
really
down
big
here.
eye socket. It
Maybe
doesn't really look like an armadillo.
How about a
from what I
pelican?
saw. It could be, but a lot of it would be missing.
Yeah, but then it's not. It's heavier than a bird skull, isn't it?
No, it's pretty light. But I don't know. It's still pretty. I like skulls that aren't pristinely bleached because they look more natural and the textures and stuff are more.
Yeah, I guess so.
So whenever people ask me about reference, it's because I look at stuff like this, and then I'll just kind of remember it when I draw and think about trying to reproduce it. And then, of course, when I have something like this, I might look at it when I draw, but usually it's just a kind of a memory or a vague idea of what it used to look like.
Point to it. All right, and anyone who's just shown up, Alan is going to work on the clay board, and he's going to do the initial. It's only water and graphite powder with
just water,
brushes and sponges and whatever.
People ask sometimes if you can use the graphite powder that comes out of those lead pointers, and I think that when I've tried that in the past, those things have pieces of lead that break off in them, and so it's really inconsistent, and you'll get like marks that are the same. I suppose you can use it as long as you don't mind that.
A rabbit skull? That'd be a big. No, there's got a point to it.
It could be. It could be.
Rabbit?
It definitely could be a rabbit skull.
You think with that point?
I don't know.
Front?
It's got a weird slope here, but
I'll have to look for it.
I'm sure there's some VC, there's some Vulturculture people out there that could tell me what it is. But
yes, and then they want you to show what you use to seal the clayboard pieces after you're finished.
To see, that's okay. That's out in the garage though. That's crystal clear.
Yeah, it's just a Krylon crystal clear. Although I know it's difficult to get if you're not in the States, if you're in Europe.
It's basically a spray acrylic gloss varnish. But anyway.
All right,
so this part of it actually doesn't take that
long. We'll be doing other things tonight too.
So we'll play with it some afterwards, just to show you the manipulation of it. But,
right, and this was. Sorry, go ahead.
I also use this is a hot air gun.
That's actually for. That's actually not a hair dryer, but a hot air gun.
A hot air gun, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's for.
I used to dry it. I used to use that for shrink wrapping.
And strangely enough, sometimes that has an impact on drawing, because if you heat a surface before you draw on it, sometimes the graphite adheres to it a little bit better for some reason. I don't know why.
Oh.
It's just, I don't know if it happens all the time or if it's just something that occasionally
now,
happens.
do you think the oil from your hands will sometimes affect the clayboard too?
I've
where it
gotten
sticks?
Spots on it before, but the thing is, it's like putting the graphite on it is like putting kitty litter in an oil spill. It soaks up the oil, and you can erase it out and then do it again, and it's gone.
Oh, okay.
So, because I've done that before.
Okay.
So you ready? You ready? Oh, sorry.
Yes. You're always looking
She was
at
quietly telling me to actually look at the lens of the camera instead of looking at her face.
at my face. I could do this, but then my bifocals don't work, and I have to look like this.
So
yes, it's my birthday, and I have bifocals.
There's like a lot of graphite on that already.
Okay. there's a ton of graphite. Is it wet at all?
Not yet. It's just dried that way.
Okay.
So anyway, I'll just get it wet and play with what's already on there.
The piece that we kind of featured this week that was
Right.
Mr. Kind was started this way.
Yep. In fact, that one had it got an interesting texture early on the board, and I had the board sitting on my desk for a long time.
Yes,
Now,
this might sit there for a while.
It could, but here's something I want to show you. When you get it, like a lot of graphite on the board,
Oh, yeah, here.
right? You can get it really dark, and it'll go really dark. When it dries kind of silver, obviously, because it is that graphite sheen. But if you get this really wet, it does a really kind of a fun thing. Whether or not you leave it that way is up to you. But if you get it super wet, it'll start to make landscapes like that are. If you can see, can you get close to it?
Yes.
Not close. See, it'll start to do these striations where it's starting to bead. And that kind of stuff, when it shows up behind other things, or it usually ends up being very subtle by the end of it.
Right.
But that kind of stuff is invaluable for trying to do like a discovery piece, because it'll help you to start picking out, your subconscious imagery that you start to find in it. But
I think Will says Bob Ross would be proud of you.
that's nice.
All right, you guys just grab more graphite powder.
So sometimes I want that, sometimes I don't. And this stuff is hard to keep because it's when it's dry, that means it's sitting on top of the water as it dries and just sort of laying down instead of being pushed into the board. And so if I want to keep it, like if I dry this at the end and want to keep some of that, I have to kind of lightly brush off a lot of the graphite first,
Right.
and then start to polish it.
This is Clayboard, Joe Beth.
So.
And you know what? He's not making any purchase. Someone asked if it was a wolf. He's just moving it around.
Right now,
it's really
I'm just
abstract right now.
Trying to
making marks is what Vanessa calls it.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. It's basically making marks with graphite and brush and water. And the thing that I'm actually looking for is some sort of an interesting pattern or rhythm that falls into the shapes. And I can direct that sometimes to a degree, especially after a certain point. But a lot of times I just play with it until it starts happening, and then go back and emphasize or focus on what's already happening in the piece that it's actually doing.
Right, that you found.
So, and remember, it's like you can have all these accidents that happen, but they're only accidents if you once you decide to keep them, they're no longer an accident.
Right,
It's a decision.
You are welcome, Sith Lord.
So.
Yeah, Steve.
So when I do this, then I would. It's going to be hard to talk now. But I'll take the hot air gun. And this actually gets really hot, so I have to be careful. And it'll move around, and that's okay. You know, sometimes I've let it dry on its own because I don't want to disturb any of the lines.
You can see it moving.
Because you can see you have to get close. You see it move.
You can see it moving.
But if I let it dry on its own, it won't move at all. And of course, I've made the table relatively level. But because we're doing this here tonight, we don't want to let this sit and dry for, an hour and a half or whatever.
Right. And this is really stream of consciousness stuff, because this might, like you said, the Mr. Kind, that board was sitting on there through 1 or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
To figure out what was going to be on it, and he kind of came about.
I can't tell you how many times I've been sitting around thinking, to myself, trying to decide what I'm going to do next, and then I just get frustrated and sit down and start picking at a piece and have the piece kind of reveal itself from my active engagement with it, rather than trying to think my way through it too much.
Yes. Does it smudge after drying? You're going to burnish it.
It does smudge at first until I get it burnished enough and polished enough, and eventually I'll polish this down so much that you can run a clean hand over the board and you won't even be able to tell that it's graphite. Yeah. But that takes a while. This thing gets up to like what does it say? 1100 degrees Fahrenheit. So it'll get pretty hot if you let it.
It's like it's drying up. Oh.
We bought this. This gun came with a system that we used to have for shrink wrapping art. Yeah.
Before they had bags, because we're old.
Yeah.
yes, it is just graphite mixed with water. He has a jar of water and a box of graphite. Do you do any studies or just mostly or just originals?
It depends on my frame of mind. If I'm trying to figure out something specific, I can do studies. If I'm doing explorational work, then I'll just dive into it.
You'll also do a study in the middle of a piece.
I do. Like after I've set like an established thing going on in here and I want to play with the composition, sometimes I'll actually take a photograph of it and do a digital study of how I'm going to take it from that point on.
Right. Sometimes you'll,
So,
yeah.
All right, so if I'm going to try to keep some of this here, right?
All right, let's
so
look at it real
what I'm going
close.
to, yeah.
I like this line right in here too.
So
Show them what they're doing.
So all I'm really doing right now is trying to.
Wait, let's see that.
Huh? This?
There, it's just a brush.
It's just this is just a soft brush, and what I'm doing right now is just knocking off some of the top of the graphite that's sitting on top. You can see some of it starts to peel away on the corners. All the parts where it's super dark, that's going to go gray. So watch, as you see it right here as it's going. I'm knocking off the loose graphite on the top, right?
Yes.
But underneath it is more pattern.
Oh yeah.
So there's more stuff that comes out when you start doing that.
Yeah,
that you can play with.
Yeah, and it's just regular graphite generals and Cretacolor. I think are probably mixed. Sorry.
Mixed, yeah. I didn't pay enough attention to know that, like, if I kept them separate or not, and I'm pretty sure that I didn't, because that would be way too much effort. In terms of keeping graphites.
It would be organizing.
But so this is probably just a mixture of both, like I said, like you said. So you can see it there. You probably can't see it on the screen, but when I do this, there's a little puffs of black graphite that pop off. And I actually have an overhead fan that's turned off right now, but normally I have it on a little bit so that pushes that stuff down, and I'm not just constantly breathing in graphite. But you can also, wear a mask if it bothers you. You don't have to wear too much. I mean, the stuff doesn't stay up very high unless you've got like a lot of updraft in your room.
Right.
If you have an overhead fan, that usually will keep it down pretty well.
This is just water and graphite, powdered graphite on ampersand clay board.
So the interesting thing is, it's weird because when you one of the interesting things to me is that when you finish a piece and there are all these like kind of darker areas that have gone silvery gray, and then you seal it, they go really dark again once you seal it with gloss.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. That's right. See, there's the powdered graphite. This is just water.
That's just water, yeah.
You just shove your brushes in, or sponges.
Yeah.
This one you didn't use any sponges. It was just the brush.
No, this was just the brush because I was keeping it straightforward and simple. Because a lot of the best patterns to me are found with the brushes. Sponges.
I like these spots here.
Okay, so what will likely happen is if what I would do normally is sit here and do this for kind of a long time. I guess I would normally like stay and brush off as much of the loose graphite as I could.
Yes.
Or probably, I don't know, I'd probably spend at least half an hour doing this in here.
Oh, and then there's...
and then this is just a white cotton rag, right? So
very like t-shirt material.
They're shop rags. We buy them in bulk as a shop rag, or you can just use old t-shirts or whatever. You can even use tissue paper as long as you don't leave too much paper behind. As long as it doesn't start to fragment.
Lint or anything like that.
So look, you can see I'm kind of pushing off the bits of graphite there.
Oh yeah.
That's going to come off anyway when I start to polish it. So it's like I got to get used to the fact that some of this is going to change, and some of these lines you see here are going to get real dark, and I'll have to bring them back out later.
Wait a minute. What do you mean by bring them back out?
Well, they're going to get covered. Like, okay, see where I was pushing off the graphite, how it kind of started to get dark in here?
Yeah.
So I can still see a lot of the texture and stuff underneath it, but I'll have to erase lightly
the darkened part. Okay.
And make it more intentional. And part of using texture is finding areas to just make them look intentional.
Right.
It's like, okay, it all looks accidental if you do it right. It looks like the piece you just sort of poured it out of a bucket and it became a piece of art. So,
that's exactly what I think
some
of your stuff looks like. I'm like, what the hell? How did this guy show up?
What it is selectively finding areas to emphasize or de-emphasize. And
I do not have this ability.
Well,
but I can use an axe.
It's like practice. Anything is like, you can learn how you get better with any of this stuff when you practice. So one of the things you got to watch out for is when you do this is that bits of graphite will build up on the sides of the piece, and so you have to, unless you know
picking it off?
Yeah, I just kind of skimmed it off. I usually do it with like a rag or something, but All right. So a lot of this light stuff is going to get darker now, but that's okay because this is just the first stage of a lengthy process.
Yes, and
So take the
we don't
cotton
know
out.
if there's any difference between Cretacolor and Generals because it's all been probably
together.
mixed in there.
Yeah.
Someone else, he has not yet figured that
All right.
out.
So this is when
you just do it wiping it, you're gonna get.
I do it lightly at first because that still helps to get rid of some of the loose graphite. You know, basically I'm pushing as much of that off as I can. And you can, if you tilt it from the side, you can see how gray the top of the board is.
Yeah.
And you can see how, like, where it's really black actually just kind of wipes off. But it still leaves a pattern, a watermark behind, basically. Okay. And by the time I'm done, I will have brought a lot of that stuff back.
Okay, and Winged Squid asks, are you already starting to envision what you're generally going to do at this point?
Well, what I'm actually, not specifically, but what I am seeing is a lot of textures and patterns and shapes that I like the rhythm of. So I know that there's something worth looking at in here. And all I have to do at a certain point is sit down and then be still enough, I guess you could say, mentally, that I could let my mind work over the piece and start finding it.
Yes.
You know, or have an idea that I want to impose on top of it. You know?
Right. And
But
yes,
so-
the cloth is dry. If
Yeah.
it was wet, everything would be moving around again.
If it were wet, this would just go to a flat, dull gray, all of it.
Okay.
And you can make a flat, dull gray surface and have a really nice subtractive surface to draw on and to subtract from. But that's a little different than this. So, and if there's any little bits of graphite that stick to it or adhere, I don't mind that because what it ends up doing is polishing and looks like little bits of silver plate photography. So you can start to see here is what it is going to look like. So, in terms of the textural background. So, and I actually like kind of working a formalized kind of shape on top of an abstract shape like this and making it work together.
Right.
Like with Mr. Kind.
With
how he
Mr.
has
Kind.
like the realistic hands and the representational head.
Yes.
And shapes that work in and out of the background. Okay.
Yes.
So now, watch.
So you just keeps getting the
So
cloth.
we go to a
is-
clean space of the cloth. So when we get, and that's one of the things I do keep doing is folding the cloth over and getting it clean again. So now when I'm doing it, it's still coming up, but not nearly as much as it did.
Right.
So, and I'll do this enough so that by the time I'm done, I could take a white cloth on here and it would barely show any. In your hands, you won't see it at all. And if you scrub with a white cloth, because it is basically porous and it ends up being like a very soft sandpaper,
Right.
you'll see it come off on that. But on your hands, like I don't have a clean spot right now, but you can touch it on top and it's not,
Oh,
there's hardly
yeah,
anything
look at
there.
mine. See?
There's almost nothing there now.
See? It doesn't come off now.
So, but when you tilt it up and you see what's going on,
Wait.
you can still see that there's still a lot of stuff there to work with.
Oh, yeah.
So, and so if you pay attention to this little spot right here,
Okay.
so that'll probably polish out, or it'll stay. Once it gets to a point, and it's like kind of random. There are sometimes spots that just never polish out, and I'll just let them stay there.
Whatever it was.
You know, those random artifacts, I don't mind really. It lends itself to the nature of the piece usually.
Right. Undeveloped art asks, what if you see a rhythm you want to keep before you have removed the loose graphite?
Well, you got a few options. You can very gently over the course of like an hour, take a soft brush and brush the loose graphite off of it, kind of lifting up as you do it instead
Right.
of pushing down. And it just takes a lot longer. And then when you start to polish it, make sure that you're constantly switching to the clean side of the rag.
Gotcha.
And it'll probably still go away a little bit, but not nearly as much. I've been able to keep a lot. Also, you can leave a lot more white on the board when you first start so that it actually gets darker as you go along.
Okay.
Right? So one of the mistakes I think people probably would make doing this is they'll start off and make the whole thing really densely black, which is cool if that's what you want to do.
But it's hard to work
But
with.
it's harder to find things in that.
Yes. All right, I've got a stack of questions here.
Yeah.
Can we go through them?
Yeah.
Do you avoid using harder pencils to draw to avoid indentation in the clay?
Yeah, actually, I use soft lead, and this was what I was talking about last week. This particular process does not lend itself to sketching on its surface. So either
Right.
you have to sketch on another piece of paper and then
then
transfer
right,
it, or you
right.
do a sketch and project it onto the board somehow.
Right.
However you get it on there, that's cool. But you can't really draw spontaneously on this
Right.
unless you're willing to leave all your mistakes, because you can't really
You can't
erase
get that
anything without
erase.
taking off the background.
Right, right. Yes, Christy, you can wash the claws and reuse them. I just wash them separately.
Yeah, they're down there in a bucket.
I wash them separately because if you put anything in with them, they will have a nice tinge of possibly graphite to them.
And when you pick it up to actually go and work on it, make sure you do it. You look at the back side, and because a lot of times if I'm really active with it, there'll be graphite on the back too.
So you
So
don't.
you just kind of wipe it off. Make sure that there's nothing there. Let me get a clean rag and I'll show you how much.
Yeah, it's all there is a bunch of stuff to see in it, you guys.
right
All right,
now,
I have
you
another
can-
one. Hold on, I have more questions. We're going too slow answering. It's hard to see.
So, well, it's just because
There's even like a
yeah.
fishtail in
Let me
there.
get it.
I'm curious about your process and how much doubt in the imagined image you might experience. Your work exudes so much curiosity and your process so much confidence.
I think what you're talking about is the fact that I will see things and I'll go after them, and many times it'll disappear, and then I'll basically just start over. But I'm confident that I'll keep going back to it over and over again, and either that original thing will come out again, or I'll find something new entirely.
Right. And here is the whole thing. This is ampersand clay board, right? And so, and there was a video up on YouTube of this, I think. If not, I'll throw it up. It's a very old one. You can take this board right now, all the work he's done on it, and take it into the kitchen sink and pour water over it with a magic eraser,
One
the
of these white
Mr. Clean magic
sponges.
eraser, and it will be back to white.
You can take it back to perfect white.
So that's if you don't want any of it and you've just screwed
Right.
it all up.
Now look.
Because you've done that
You see how gray this is, right?
I see how gray it is.
And now I'm actually just polishing it.
You're using some effort because you're moving the table.
And there's
it's
very little coming off. No.
Barely any graphite coming
Yeah.
off.
And so, what you do have to worry about is if you have fingernails, you can actually make burnish marks with your fingernails if you're not careful.
Accidentally, yeah.
Because I've done that before, and then you basically, you either have to work around it or fix it somehow. So,
You can find our YouTube videos on Alan Williams Studio
wait, let me find a
on
clean
YouTube.
spot.
So on YouTube, we're Alan Williams Studio, which is also our website, which is down. But thank you. You guys, people have been emailing me and just ordering stuff saying, I like this piece, and I'll get out the prints to them. And Patreon, there's videos up on Patreon also
If you were
that eventually get released to YouTube. But Patreon is just patreon.com/Alan Williams.
if you're ambitious and you like the process or whatever, and you want to do, you could stack up 5 or 6 of these boards and do this part of it, in a few hours, and have like 5 or 6 boards to play with at once.
But that's kind of what you do. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got like 2 of them on your desk
Yeah.
over there right now.
Yeah, from various sizes, and I have
Yes.
a larger one that I haven't really even started with yet.
All right, Dave, you missed how it started, but you know what? This will be up. I'll put it up under stories, so you can just grab the first 20 minutes or however long we've been on
Yeah.
for the next. It'll be up under the stories on Instagram for the next 24 hours. So
So right now, the only graphite the problem is the stuff that's hanging out on the edges right now.
why is that a problem?
Well, it's sticking to the edge, and then I pull it off, and then you have to make sure that you don't drag it back onto the piece and start drawing with it, basically.
Yes. Don't worry about missing it. Remember, it'll be up under the stories on Instagram, and then I release it to Patreon, and then eventually I get it up on YouTube.
And at this stage, any little bit of water you get on here will just take the graphite off if you're polishing it.
Yeah.
So be careful,
So-
because if you do that thing where you're talking sometimes and your salivary glands do this,
Yeah.
it'll
Gleek.
show up. It'll
When you'll
show up.
gleek on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
So, or if you get a drop of water from somewhere else, it'll like make a straight mark through the whole thing, and then you really kind of have to either
Yeah.
start over or figure out a way to incorporate it.
Osberg asks if this is the size you normally work on. That's 11 by 14, isn't it? That's kind of big.
This is 9 by 12.
Oh, God.
This is 9 by 12.
There's
because-
like one standard size frame at
Yeah.
the local frame shop that's 9 by 12.
So-
he likes to torture me.
But I actually have been. It gets different. The process changes a bit when you work larger, because you're actually trying to do different kinds of brush strokes,
Right.
and you want to be able to change the scale of what you do. You know
Right.
what I mean, so you can, like when I was working on the 24 by 48 piece, I had to use bigger brushes to get bigger movement in the piece.
Right.
And so in that respect, it does change a bit, and it starts to get very uniform for some reason when it's on a larger scale, and you have to take that into account.
Yeah.
And you have to go back into it and play with it even more.
Right.
But yeah, scale does change it a bit. it's the small ones are actually kind of easy and fun to start with because you can, it feels like you can just mess it up, clean it off, start it
I
over.
think your normal small size, your favorite size is like 8x10.
Yeah, 8x10 is
Because when I try to make him do 5x7, he gets all cranky.
and go to 8x10. I
He's
have
like,
5x7s,
he's like, oh look, I started a 5x7, and I'm like,
or
yeah.
I do a 5x7 and go, oh, that would have been much better 8x10.
Yes. Oh yeah, you just noticed the hair.
So,
It's our.
well, I'm letting my hair grow out again, and it gets in the way. So this is.
Yes. How would you, Pineapple MXN asked, how would you suggest getting the most out of your drawing practice for someone with limited time to draw?
Well, specifically, the thing that most people would say would be figure drawing is probably the thing that's going to give you the most discipline and observation skills at the same time.
Right.
You know? Yeah. So if you can, even if you draw from photographs, you don't have to be in front of a model.
Right.
But to me, if you're just learning to draw and you want to be able to control your medium, it's about the discipline, the ability to do what you want with it, and observation, the ability to see things clearly. And that mostly, to me, that's what figure drawing ends up being, is like you're staring at a body until you understand what it looks like, rather than just thinking you know what it looks like.
Right. You can intellectually, I know you can intellectually know that there's a femur there and it connects to the hip, but it's all in how you see it.
Yeah, I mean, all that stuff adds up to, I think even when they make you, when you do like the crochets, or the deconstructed bodies, I have one right there.
Okay, yes.
I think that's mostly about teaching you how to observe properly than anything. It's not, I don't really think it's so much, I mean, a lot of people talk about being able to sketch a figure from memory, but it never really helped me in that respect. But what it did do was make me look at the form and see subtle changes in the form,
Yes. Okay. So if you missed the whole process, that's okay. Because after we get done with this at 10 o'clock, I'll put it up under our stories. And so you can, for the next 24 hours, you can just watch it on Instagram under our story. Okay. So you can watch the whole thing again. And, and then eventually it will be up on it'll be a Patreon first, and then YouTube, which is at Alan Williams Studio. So the story of a piece comes after the form develops. That's sometimes not.
That's true. Okay, so now this is like the cleanest spot on the rag,
right?
And then when I'm actually burnishing it, it's like almost nothing's coming off now.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot there to play with. And so now really the only way to get it off is with erasers. You use kneaded erasers or sponges.
At that spot in there. It's hard to see.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is that it does become.
I love that spot right there.
It becomes a kind of a.
That's better.
half-tone background to work on top of.
Oh no! I just stuck my elbow in the graphite.
It's graphite.
I know.
So, by the way, I want to say this out loud because I didn't say it on Instagram.
Okay. What are you saying out loud?
My daughter Maeve won the Doodle for Google competition for the entire state of Mississippi.
Yes, she did.
So
she won Doodle for Google.
They gave her a Chromebook. There's a possibility that if she gets voted into the finalists, she could actually get a $30,000 scholarship.
I know.
And that comes up on Monday. They start voting.
We'll start voting on Monday.
Yeah. If you guys, I'm going to put up a link. I'm going to put up a thing that says what's going on, and you vote for who you want to. Obviously, you go through and look at the things, but she was very happy.
They're by
she
age
did it
group.
All herself.
I know, and the thing was, it was what inspires you, the Doodle for Google, and it was she did artists inspire her, because her dad is an artist and he inspires her. How sweet is that?
So I was very happy for her. Anyway, so that's basically where I would take it before I would actually start playing with it. Or normally what happens is I'll set it over there while I'm doing something else.
Okay.
And glance at it like half a dozen times.
Right. Right. Okay.
Until what?
So the story sometimes doesn't always come after. Sometimes it comes in the middle, because they were talking about The Good Dog. That was kind of, you were doing it, and halfway through it, that
sort of gelled as I was doing it.
As you were doing it, but then you wrote it. Yeah.
And some of them come before, like they'll occur to me as a title.
Yes.
And then the title will lead me to the imagery. And
right.
Sometimes it doesn't happen until the very end. So there's no real formal description of how the process goes with that. It just sort of happens.
A lot of yours.
Sometimes
there's no formal
process. A couple of years after I do the picture.
And Parker asked, who's a bigger influence, Beksinski or Geiger?
That's, you know what? I would say that they're pretty. It's different. They're pretty close to being the same level of influence for different reasons. Because Giger was sort of like biotech, and Beksinski was sort of like rampant organic. You know, it's like organics taking over everything.
Right.
Whereas Giger was like technology taking over everything organic.
Oh, yeah.
It was
That's
like they came
yeah.
from different angles.
They did come from different angles.
Yeah, and I love them both because looking at both of their work, it made it accessible for me to like look at like the patterns of things and just to try to bring that out.
Right. Right.
Because I found all those. There's a lot of Beksinski's video diaries on YouTube, and
Oh, yeah.
his sketches are just these little line drawings that are very light,
Mm-hmm.
most of them. And then when he did the paintings, it was just like there were these patterns of texture and a lot of acrylic underpainting.
It
that he
was
would-
just like
yeah.
all there.
So, I mean, Giger, I mean, he planned things a lot more.
Oh, yeah.
Because he used a lot of, if I remember reading correctly, he used a lot of stencils that would repeat over and over.
Oh, yeah, for
And
the...
he would work back into it, and he used, I think it was called an EFBE, German. I think it was a German-made airbrush that was a thumb action airbrush for most of the work that he did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this will sit on your desk then.
Yeah.
So that's a basic process. Remember, if you missed it, that's okay because we'll...
And you know, it's really strange because one of the things that it happens, if I touch that now, that little blip of water there, it'll make a white mark. So I just got to let it dry before I touch it again.
Yes.
But you have to be under the right kind of light in a dimly lit room. Once you finish a piece with this stuff, it's like it disappears. But if
Right.
it has to be in a room that's kind of usually well
Right.
lit, you know, and you can see more of it, you know.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
It's hard with the glare, but and then we were talking earlier, once I'm completely finished, spraying it with the gloss acrylic varnish
Yes.
makes all this really, really dark again. And I like the darker stuff in terms of, but then again, there's a part of me that wants to go through it and do a very high key drawing that's just
Right.
all the light shadows.
Right, right. We have a YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is Alan Williams Studio. Go
So-
check her out. Check it out.
One of the things that I do,
And Alan does the art and all this stuff, but I do everything else. So sometimes things get shuffled back. And like for a while, I had like one thing up a month on YouTube. So I'll get better.
so I'm going to move the light over.
Okay. Oh, and you know what? Someone wanted a Krylon.
I'll get it.
All right, you're going to move the light over? Oh, I turned the fan on. I'm sorry.
There. I just have to lower it if you're going to do that.
Where are the other light? Oh, they're not there. What age did you What age did you start taking art more seriously, Hannah? How many years are you doing this? Okay, we've been together 30 years, and he was working before I got to him.
So I started probably, drawing like everybody did when I was a little kid. But in high school, right around middle school, I think, actually, I started doing poster contests in school. And I started winning the local poster contests, and that sort of made me sort of start paying attention to the fact that I could draw a little bit.
Right.
Which is why I'm really happy with Maeve, and she's kind of doing a little bit of the same thing. So I would, after I won the first poster contest in the school that I was at, for like 5 years after that, or 4 or 5 years after that, I won every single one of them, so they stopped having them. And so I was like, okay, well, because I asked one of the teachers about it, and they were like, well, we're not going to have it again until you leave. Because everybody's tired of you.
Because everyone's got it.
Now, it was just poster contest, right? So...
Yeah, but you were like 15, so...
Yeah, but I
important.
mean, it really, it's like, it's different, because when you're doing stuff at that age, most of it does look quite a bit like everybody else's.
Right.
It's just that I kept doing it. Let me go grab that other thing.
Okay.
Plus, this is the stage where I wash my hands, because if I start now with graphite on my hands, then it gets in the way.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
So he has to go wash his hands and everything. So here, I'll show you the stuff that I stuck up here. How did we meet? Oh, we met a long time ago. These are our boxes above there's the pangolin. A horn-billed skull. There's the magnifying glass. There's a little creeper by Dominic Queck. And my mushroom. What else is around here? Our armor. Maeve's rock, or Duncan's rock from years ago. Awesome mushroom. I know it's from the Disney. It was one of those. We actually met at Dragon Con back when it was in 1988, so that's how long we've been together. We have our Cintiq. He has a Cintiq when he works digitally. Underneath that, this one is the Brother Scan Cut that he uses to do his templates for. Then he showed you guys some templates. These are...
This one.
Wait.
What?
Have to make sure you're not... This is the NDA drawers.
Okay, so this one's almost empty.
Oh, that one's in... This is... I know this is hard to get in Europe, though.
This is one of the ones that I've used. I've used Crystal Clear, just anything that's a gloss acrylic varnish. This is for the very end.
This is the very end, and...
Yeah. And you can spray it. You can even spray it with a workable fixative.
And
then paint an acrylic varnish.
Yeah, and
on
this
top of it.
actually...
Huh?
You can get this at like Walmart
Yeah,
or something.
you can get this almost anywhere. You can get this almost any paint store.
Ah, okay.
It's just a gloss acrylic varnish.
Right.
So
Dragon Con is a convention in Atlanta that used to be in October. Now it's over Labor Day weekend. And so I was telling him we met in 1988. At Dragon Con, and he said...
you said, why aren't there any prices on your work?
Oh,
said,
that's
I don't
true.
think anybody would want to buy it.
That's true. It's true. There were no prices on his work.
Yeah. So, all right. So this is basically where I would start. See, I have another one. It's already kind of ready.
And this was your small one you had, but you used it.
Oh, I used this one as a test. I was trying different types of medium mixed with the graphite, and then put on with like a palette knife and then a stencil, just playing with it. I don't know if you can see it or not.
Yeah, you can see it easily.
But it's kind of fun because of the text. It adds a surface textural quality to something that's visual.
Right.
Yeah.
You have a drawing that reaches the edge of the paper, mind at large, and want to get it framed, but don't want any of the drawing to be covered up. You can float it.
Yeah.
They can float it on a piece of mat board, but then it still has to not touch the glass. So you're either going to have to use spacers for it or put stuff around it. So do you use Gamvar sometimes? Yes, sometimes you use Gamvar.
Especially if I've done that would be at the end if I've used oil.
Right,
Because
you use Gamvar.
The Gamvar is really a really high gloss varnish, and it like levels itself out. It actually looks really good.
I know I've got a bunch of those varnish porn that I haven't put up. Yes, it is a Herman Miller chair, right? Isn't that yes? What is that?
Arion, yeah.
Oh, it's an Arion chair. That was like 1 year. It was his big.
I said my back always hurts, and so we got a chair, and my back hasn't hurt since we bought this chair.
I know.
I'm sure there's other chairs that would do it too.
You did that, but it's touching the glass. It shouldn't be touching the glass. You can use spacers, which will separate the glass from. You can either buy spacers, which go along the edge of this frame underneath the rabbet, and it like sits between the mat board and the glass, and then the piece actually has to be attached to that piece of mat board somehow. It can be done. I don't like to do it because then I have to...
Yeah.
Oh, there's a little one too.
So this was one I did, and instead of using the brushes, I used the sponges and basically just patted it around until it looked fairly... even and pleasing. But in terms of adding and subtracting, this will operate the same as this. I can go back in and play with this and turn it into, but it'll suggest obviously different kinds of things. Whereas this is all movement. This almost looks like cloud cover. That's kind of just hanging out and staying there. I don't know. But I like this too. I just haven't used this very much yet because this was more of an experiment like the textural stuff was. But,
right. Turn your iPad on so I can see what time it is.
Okay.
Oh, it's 9:46.
Sorry, got distracted.
That's all right. Got distracted.
So a lot of times the first thing I'll start doing is just I'll grab a kneaded eraser. This is a fairly new one, even though it looks pretty dirty.
So you
And
usually work on clayboard. For these pieces, you usually work on clayboard. When he works on his regular pencil pieces, he works on a bunch of different papers.
yeah, like Strathmore and Arches and all that. But
So what areas are interesting to you in this one right now?
well, I just usually I'll pick a spot and start like playing with it, like and like
What surface can you use to replace the clayboard? You could try gesso board. It's just going to act different.
I did gesso board with this technique and it works. But you really want to probably sand and polish the board to a pretty high finish.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you don't want any texture in the board.
Because the texture in the board is where you have a problem getting the graphite back out if you want to.
Right. Yeah.
But
Okay, I'm going to zoom in on you.
the
Wait.
piece that I did that was the Lotus King, that was done on gesso board, and it was a 24 by 48 piece of gesso board.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
it wasn't really that polished, and that piece kind of fought me from beginning to end. But it still worked out okay because I just stuck with it. I didn't take no for an answer.
No, you were. It was a. What do you like to say? You were.
We
decided-
agreed to disagree.
You agreed to disagree.
Me and the piece agreed to disagree,
He
but
doesn't
we
go
we kept-
through kneaded erasers. He just adds to his pile of kneaded erasers.
I think I probably have my original kneaded eraser as a part of all of these because I
Yes.
keep mixing them together.
And you can clean them, right?
Yeah, but when you snap them, when you do this, it cleans it. You can get hairs and stuff out of them by popping them like that.
Yes.
And I don't know how it really works, or maybe they just get so small that you don't see them anymore. But you can tell that it starts to clean. But and I actually like them when they get like well chewed gum and they're like really kind of squishy. Because when they get dark like this, they get really soft, and they don't hold their shape as much. They don't really work as well, but that's okay too because sometimes I don't want them to pull up graphite as fast.
Okay. Can you get a pure white from erasing even the darkest values
Yes,
in that?
yes, you can, especially if you use an electric eraser. This you can bring it back. You can bring it back to a pure white with. What I do is selectively do that. You can get pretty close with a regular kneaded eraser and an abrasive eraser. Where they at?
That's okay.
Here's one. It's just not sharpened. So this is one of those abrasive erasers. I just haven't sharpened it yet. But you lift off large areas and soft areas with a kneaded eraser, right? So you can do this, and it starts
I
to.
do that too.
Well, why? This is more about showing people how to do
Yeah,
it.
there's always pencil within it too. Like
Yeah.
Mr. Kind just didn't come out. He will work back and forth.
Oh,
Someone
yeah.
asked me if the skull seams were just in there. The skull seams weren't in there. You
No.
added those
See,
afterwards.
if you look up on my desk, I have skulls and I have these anatomy tools, replicas, everywhere.
Have you tried blue tack for erasers?
Blue tack. No, somebody mentioned blue tack before, but I haven't tried that.
Oh.
But you can also, and this is kind of fun, these Mr. Clean Magic erasers, when they're dry, they'll lift up very gently, almost like an airbrush, and you can you can take up just a very gentle gradation. So what it is sort of a combination of just completely random and letting things happen with a really high degree of control after the fact.
Yeah, because you'll use the pencil in it. Anything that you see that's at detail. They all start like this, but it doesn't come out when. This is just the mark making, and then you'll figure out like you erased the parts to make the hands.
Yeah, and this you probably heard this before, but this more than anywhere is more or less a Rorschach test. You do these patterns and you start to play with them and then see what happens.
I totally see it like a mermaid tail in that.
Yeah. Well, they're doing that mermaid thing right now, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
So I say they. I mean the young folks.
The young folks. Did you say that?
I said it.
God.
I was being funny. But
He's doing that because it's my birthday and I'm 49.
it is her birthday. That's why, like I said, that's why I'm wearing pants.
Oh, stop.
I normally wear sweatpants. Now I'm wearing real pants.
What's the benefit of an electric eraser? Didn't even
you
know
wanna
they
see it?
existed. Oh my God. How
All
could,
right.
Yes, it's just.
All right, now.
No, what are you going to do
All
on
right,
that?
let's see. You mean to do it on the other one since you're
No,
not
can you do it on this one? No,
that's sealed.
That's sealed.
All right, but I'll do it on this one because I haven't spent enough time to care about the patterns.
All right, no, you
as soon
kinda-
as I start touching something and start playing with it, I don't want to screw it up anymore. Which is
And
weird
you,
because
those patterns
because if it didn't work, I would have to wipe it out and start over, and at that point I would let go of it. But right now, there's enough in here that I want to play with it. Now I want to save this and actually put some effort into it. This one I haven't looked at much, so I'll show you what electric erasers.
Wait.
will do.
Let me get a good shot.
You ready? And this
Yes.
one is.
I don't know. That's pretty cool right in there.
These. Stop it.
Sorry.
These actually, to me, electric erasers get more interesting when the battery starts to slow down because they start getting a little more gentle. But this one's pretty well, like, okay.
It's a perfect white spot.
So it'll take it back to white. And what you just do then is decide, okay, where your highest points are going to be. Then you take them back to white and watch. Now there's not a lot of graphite on here. It has a little bit, but I can knock it back down a little bit. If you see how I do this, and it goes to like a 5 or 6% gray, and then all of a sudden it's a little bit of a.
Well, people were asking, and they're not asking on here, but
And then you can erase around it.
all of the highlights are not paint or anything. It's just the white of the board.
Oh yeah, it's just the white of the board. But I've had to figure out a way to be able to get back to white because painting a white on top of this, it stands out too much.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the same effect. All right, so now you notice that once with the electric eraser and then using a kneaded eraser, there's a very distinctive line right there, right? So what you do, let me sharpen this.
Can't even see it on the. It's having a. There we go.
Right. So you can see the distinctive line from where the kneaded
Yes.
eraser was.
Do you also smoke in your work? I have a feeling this is another.
I don't know what that means. If you're talking about weed, I don't. No. we had a question like this before, but about what kind of psychotropes I'm on, and I honestly have never done any psychotropic stuff. Not that I would be against it.
Yeah.
But-
Can you use electric erasers on paper? Yes, you can. Just be careful.
Yeah, they're just a lot harder on paper. Okay, so this is why I keep sandpaper. This is 400 grit wet dry. I keep it to polish, to sharpen the abrasive erasers.
Abrasive eraser.
So and then so you can get to a pretty good point.
That
you
is
know,
a really fun
if you want to spend time, you can get to a super point. But
No, wait. Okay.
So
So
then
you can see the line between the two.
you can see this line here.
Yes.
And if you want to, like, this is, imagine that this is the top of that skull on Mr. Kind. That's just shavings. So I'd go back in and start to blend that highlight into the graphite around it. And the only way to do that, you have to kind of spin the eraser in your hand so you always have a little bit of a clean edge.
Oh yeah. You see how he's moving it? I never even noticed.
Yeah.
Now I noticed.
So I'm going to show you something else, though, that's kind of fun to do if you can.
Okay, because it's 9:55. You got 5 minutes.
All right, this is very easy though. So, but it's actually one of those things that I like to do because it adds a lot more texture and life to it, and it's just real simple. There's a dark spot in the center, and I'll usually go back in with a smaller, like, see that little? There's a little shadow in the center. This is an engraver that I put an eraser into. So, and just clean it up, and then I'll mess it up again. I'll keep going back and forth until there's a certain level of control, but messiness in it that I can. You can see You can see if I spend time on it, I can blend out that highlight until it works in with it.
But it's all time. It spends a lot of time.
Right. So the fun part though is when you take a bit of steel wool.
The steel wool.
And you start just making, like, this is actually how I did the head, the head shape.
Kind.
I began with this, and to find out where I wanted my highest point of his head to be.
Yeah, look at that.
Right. So you got to bear in mind that what you've basically done here is a graphite scratch board, as well as drawing. It's more of a graphite scratch board. And so,
but then you're going to draw back into it.
I'll draw back into it.
The stuff just doesn't pop out when you throw the powdered graphite down.
No, you do have to draw back into it. See, and then you take the kneaded eraser and you can start picking out like a specular highlight for like a high point or whatever.
Yeah, this is a good video.
See?
It's going to be up on the stories if you didn't see the beginning. Look at that.
This is precisely how I did the skull for Mr. Kind. I started with the shape. And then I found like the area, the direction I wanted to go
And
in.
he's like a day or two ago on the Instagram.
He's going to be at the Copro show coming up.
Copro show is opening next. It's the Roadside Attractions 3 show that's opening next Saturday, May 12th.
Yeah. In Santa Monica.
In Santa Monica. And our YouTube channel is Alan Williams Studio. Our Patreon, if you want to throw something in there, or if you just want to follow us, you can follow us because stuff goes public too. And that is at patreon.com/Alan Williams, ALLEN Williams. Our website is Alan Williams Studio, but it is down. You can email me if you're interested in anything there.
This is just a small, I guess it was probably a cat's tongue or a filbert that I keep for doing subtle blending and stuff.
Wait, it's a cat's tongue or
it's either a cat's tongue or a filbert, but it was a tiny.
Oh, the shape.
Yeah, it's a Raphael.
Oh, okay.
But you know, whatever. It's as long as it's a soft brush, you can blend the graphite with it. You know, and everybody.
Not drawing a fucking cat. Sorry.
Who keeps asking? I did a cat. Somebody asked me for a cat before.
I know.
And
I think the same person. They're being funny.
Oh, they being funny?
Yes, they're being funny.
I did a cat.
What is the brush doing? What was the brush doing?
Oh, it's hard to see because it's so subtle from your vantage point probably in the video. But what it is actually letting me blend a little bit of the graphite around. And
All of this is time. It's just...
See, and you can see that it has a really nice specular white.
It's,
you know, it's glaring right there.
It's glaring because it's shining.
See.
Hold on, no.
How's that? Is that better?
It doesn't matter. It's so bright.
In reality, what looks like it isn't even as white as it shows up on the video right now. It's a little bit more subtle than that, and it's just I use these. I like to look at low key photography because it's basically just like shadow. Yes. And so when I've done something like this and I say, oh, this is a nice focal spot for the light. Then I'll start thinking about where are all the dark shadows going to go, and then you know, because then I'll start thinking about the low key aspect of it, and how to build a form from the shadows at that point, you know.
Yes. All right. Yeah, so. You can. How do you get the powder to stick? That was at the beginning of the video, and you'll see this under his stories on Instagram for the next 24 hours.
And
so
then
Tiny Old Tickler, you can see it there in just a couple minutes because we're almost done with this, and. Yes, we have a YouTube. Just said it. Alan Williams Studio is a YouTube and our website. Go to YouTube, Alan Williams Studio. Oh, we're having an implosion. The kids are
yelling at each other.
Kids are screaming at each other.
Well, it's late for them.
Yes. Do you create maquettes for lighting reference? Yes, he does.
I do. I have one that I made. Do we have enough time for me to get it?
Oh, you're dying to see. I don't know. You have to do it. You better run and go get it. Oh, he had one. I will see you guys next Saturday. He's going to get his maquette that he had sculpted. He sculpted it and I
sculpted it in ZBrush and then printed it because I want to actually I want to sculpt it traditionally. And I thought if I do it in ZBrush and then print it, I'll have more or less a maquette for myself to be able to sculpt it traditionally.
So that was his.
So somebody said it looks like those Landstriders from.
Oh, well, a little bit.
Yeah, it does. When you look at them, though, this actually will eventually have long wings. And there's a person that sits right here.
Mm-hmm. Yes. These are all the things he does that is still working. But I look at him and I go, do more art. So. He has a solo show coming up at the same gallery, Copro, and that's going to be in August. Move from July to August. You are welcome, everyone. Thanking you for the live feed.
Oh, thank you for watching.
If you watch this under the stories, I think you see all the questions, don't you? No, so. If not, I'm trying to, someone asked about seeing the questions. I try to say the questions people are asking and then repeat them. So you're not just left in the dark. It's not just him answering.
And you can always email us the questions.
Yes.
And we'll, if we can, we'll get to it. We actually get to most everything eventually.
Sure.
We'll answer them through emails or messages or whatever.
You think that? Well, I try to get to all of them. Alan does the drawings and painting. I know it's almost time. Yeah.
But that's pretty much it. And then that combined with drawing back into it, you know, with like a 6B lead is what I've been favoring lately.
You have 20 seconds.
And thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. He won't be able to draw it. Maybe he'll be drawing into this week. So catch us on YouTube, Alan Williams Studio. That's also our website, patreon.com/Alan Williams. And we will see you guys next Saturday.
Next Saturday.